What's up, guys? Welcome to another awful book review. Let's get into it. A hot topic of conversation that's been going on recently is the rapid rate of globalization that's been going on. As increasing amounts of trade and human migration have occurred, there's been a large group of individuals who have been concerned that this has led to a loss of their own culture and identity, which has led to the rise of many nationalistic parties across the world. However, in today's book, The Silk Roads, written by Frankopan, we learn that cross-cultural exchange and globalization has been occurring on the Silk Road between Europe and Asia since almost the dawn of civilization itself. And different things that we consider a unique part of our history and our culture are really actually shared experiences across a wide variety of different civilizations. The first instance of cross-cultural exchange happened with Alexander the Great of Greece. Alexander traveled along the Silk Roads, conquering the Persian Empire and making it all the way to India from Greece. Alexander was said to have had a major influence across a variety of different Asian cultures. For instance, the Hindu epic, the Ramayana, is actually said to have been influenced by the Greek poem, the Odyssey. Additionally, Buddhist statues are said to have been heavily influenced by the Greek sculptures of Apollo that they used to build in front of their temples. Alexander also took certain Asian customs back with him. For instance, the method of executing people via crucifixion was taken from the Persians back to Greece and then later adopted by the Roman Empire, who then used it on some Jew 2,000 years later. We also learned that Alexander took a male Persian concubine by the name of Bagos back with him. Turns out that Alexander the G really enjoyed the D. The Silk Roads played such a massive role in the economic lifeblood between Europe and Asia that centuries later, the Roman Emperor Constantine established its second capital in what's now modern-day Turkey, and called that capital Constantinople. And Constantinople effectively served as almost a gateway between the West and the East for nearly 1,000 years. One similarity between all the civilizations between Europe and Asia was a very common fear of the nomadic people that lived in this region of the world known as the steppes. Constantinople built heavy fortifications around their city in order to protect themselves. The Persian Empire built the walls of Derbent, and China built the Great Wall of China, aka Donald Trump's wet dream, in order to protect themselves from the nomadic people of the steppes. The reason why so many different civilizations were afraid of people from the steppes was, despite the fact that they were fairly nomadic and not very well civilized, they were excellent horseback riders, and their horses were generally naturally bigger than other horses available because that is actually where horses naturally come from. And this fear was not exactly misplaced. People from this region every 500 years or so would basically come out like a bat out of hell and pretty much destroy the civilized world. These include people like Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Tamerlane, and of course my ex-girlfriend Becky. However, despite the many wars on the Silk Road, there were also time periods of peace and prosperity. For instance, despite what many people think today, the relationship between the Muslim and Christian world was not one of a clash of civilizations, but rather one of cooperation and trade for each other's mutual benefit. Even during the height of religious animosity between Christians and Muslims during the Crusades, Muslim traders were still allowed to come into Europe and sell their goods and wares without hassle, and vice versa. In other words, even during the height of religious animosity between Christians and Muslims, there still wasn't a Muslim ban. The dominance of Western Europe didn't really happen until the 15th century, when the discovery of the New World put Europe from being on the outskirts of trade and economic opportunity to being in the center of it all. Raw materials were brought from the New World into ports in Portugal and Spain, and then traded along the Silk Roads, allowing for a massive explosion of wealth in Western Europe. The economic rise of Europe, and especially England, led to countries wanting to colonize other countries along the Silk Road to bolster their economic position, as well as to acquire newly discovered oil reserves. And no country was as good as strategically colonizing other countries quite like the British Empire. However, the scars of British colonization, particularly in the Middle East, are still felt today. Saudi Arabia's religious extremism today was influenced by the British funding Wahhabis in World War I in order to fight the Ottoman Empire. The story of Lawrence of Arabia seems a hell of a lot less romantic when you consider the fact that he turned the country over to people who just now started to let women drive. The British also tried to take massive amounts of oil from Iran with their Anglo-Persian company, now known as BP. This eventually led to Iranians revolting, which the British government tried to stop by establishing a Shah of Iran. This eventually led to even further revolutions, which laid the groundwork for most of the hostilities that Iranians feel with the West today. And lastly is the country of Iraq, a country that has three distinct groups of individuals who share no common culture or history, who for the convenience of the British Empire had a border drawn around them and told, work it out. Iraq is basically like when you have a group project in class, but instead of getting to pick your friends to be in your group, your teacher assigns you with that kid that gets nosebleeds every minute and a girl that's only good for taking selfies. And with the Kurds in northern Iraq trying to declare independence just recently, we are still dealing with the ramifications of this arbitrary border that was drawn 100 years ago. Overall, I think this book taught me that there's no such thing as European or Asian history, but rather all of our histories are shared collectively. Nothing that happened in one part of the world simply happened in a vacuum and didn't affect anything else. Overall, this book gets 4.5 stars out of 5, and I highly recommend it. And that's my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned next time for another book review on beer, politics, and books.